Hello, and thank you for joining us to learn a little bit more about two exciting and important climate initiatives that we are working on at the City of San Diego. I am Heidi Von Blum, Deputy Director in the city's Planning Department, and I am joined today with Jordan Moore, also from the Planning Department, who will be presenting on the city's Climate Resilient SD Plan. We are also joined with Alyssa Muto, Director of the city's Sustainability and Mobility Department, and Mariah Saldana, Program Coordinator in the Sustainability and Mobility Department, who will be presenting on the city's Climate Action Plan update. You may be wondering, what is the difference between a climate resiliency plan and a climate action plan? And that is a good question. A climate action plan is focused on reducing harmful emissions in our city to mitigate climate change. But we also know that we still face hazards from a changing climate. And the Climate Resiliency and Adaptation Plan is focused on how we not only prepare for, but also improve our communities as we experience climate change into the future. As drafts of these two critical plans are released for your review, we want to emphasize that these are just that, they are drafts, and we need your feedback to make them even better so that we can ensure that we address climate change in the ways that will improve your lives the most. Toward the end of this presentation, Jordan will be giving a quick tutorial on how to use an exciting new tool to easily interact with and comment live on our plans. Thank you in advance for the helpful feedback that we look forward to hearing from you. And now I will turn it over to Jordan. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, Heidi. Climate Resilient SD will be the city's climate adaptation and resiliency plan to invest in and improve the lives of people that live in our city while increasing local capacity to prepare for, adapt to, recover from, and thrive in a changing climate. It is a plan to ensure that while we are investing in climate adaptation, we are also improving the lives of San Diegans by furthering social equity, improving air and water quality, and increasing the safe and enjoyable spaces in our neighborhoods. The plan is identified in the city's existing Climate Action Plan as a critical strategy, and to meet the Senate Bill 379 requirements to identify strategies to mitigate climate change risks by January 1st, 2022. Climate Resilient SD is a plan that is informed by the completion of several vulnerability assessments that have been prepared to identify city exposure and vulnerability to climate change hazards. In San Diego, there are 4 primary hazards that we face: extreme heat, wildfire, changes in precipitation, which includes flooding and drought, and sea level rise. The assessments identified city asset vulnerability to climate change and potential consequences, and this information in turn informed the development of the Climate Resilient SD plan. With help from the public, we developed 5 main goals for a climate resilient city. We want to ensure communities are connected and informed, a resilient and equitable city, to safeguard and protect historic and tribal cultural resources, to support thriving natural environments, and to maintain critical city services. One of the primary goals of the plan is to make a clear statement that we prioritize investments and resources in underserved communities for those with the greatest needs and fewest resources available to adapt. When we identify vulnerabilities, we talk about consequences, and the consequences of a vulnerability can be felt very differently across the city. For example, the effects of extreme heat can be felt differently by those with resources, insulated homes with air conditioning, than those with older homes without AC, or who cannot easily access public spaces where they can cool down. Therefore, strategies to adapt to extreme heat, tree plantings, cool zones, and cool streets need to be prioritized in these areas with greater needs. For each adaptation strategy, the plan identifies core benefits that the city gains from its implementation in addition to addressing and adapting to climate change. Equity is a core benefit that can be gained through many of the strategies and is identified as a prioritized factor for implementation. Ongoing equitable engagement with our residents will also be critical to the successful implementation of the plan, to ensure that we deliver needed infrastructure to the communities that need it the most and meet the specific needs of those communities as well. The Climate Resilient SD Plan also prioritizes nature-based climate change solutions. These are solutions that work with nature to address climate change, meaning that they leverage the ecosystem benefits that a healthy and well-managed ecosystem can provide, such as greenhouse gas emission reductions, cleaner air, and water quality protection. Nature-based solutions are prioritized because of the multiple benefits they provide to communities and to the city overall, such as additional green spaces to provide community cooling and cleaner air. Examples of nature-based solutions include restored natural landscapes, such as wetlands and the creation of living shorelines, as well as green streets, bioswales, and tree plantings. The Climate Resilient SD Plan includes a suite of adaptation and resilience strategies, which consist of policies, programs, projects, or actions. Strategies fall mainly into two categories: those that provide risk mitigation and those that build better communities. Risk mitigation strategies reduce exposure to climate hazards, reduce the sensitivity to that exposure, or increase the capacity to adapt. Strategies focused on building better communities increase the ability of a community to respond to climate change impacts. 86 strategies are included in the draft of the Climate Resilient SD Plan. Additional details on each of those strategies is included in Appendix A, which outlines the climate hazards addressed, the actions needed to implement the strategy, core benefits to be realized with the strategy implementation, and the implementation timeframe and order of magnitude costs. The strategies included in the draft plan are intended to be people-centered, meaning that they are not only intended to adapt to climate change, but also to improve the lives of people that live in and visit our city. We can improve the lives of our residents with access to cool zones, increased access to parks and open spaces, especially naturally shaded spaces, more green spaces in our urban areas, and more community gardens and vacant lots, rooftops, or other public spaces. As I mentioned earlier, many of the strategies are focused on protecting our natural spaces, clean air and water, and protecting the plants and animals that live in San Diego. These strategies include integrating increases in wildfires into watershed management and planning, planting and maintaining trees, supporting healthy watersheds, and ensuring the preservation of our sensitive open space areas. The plan also includes strategies that are focused on education and outreach, including implementing equitable outreach and education programs, continually improving upon principles for meaningful and equitable community engagement, and providing information and guidance for residents in areas that are prone to climate change hazards. And of course, the plan also addresses the city's critical infrastructure so that we as a city can continue to serve our residents every day. Strategies to maintain critical city operations include updating the city's CIP process to address equity and resiliency factors and prioritization, developing new guidelines for city infrastructure and development, maintaining road access and expanding safe and enjoyable walking and biking facilities, accounting for sea level rise and water and wastewater planning, diversifying the city's water supply through the city's Pure Water program, and microgrid implementation to increase grid resiliency. The plan includes a suite of adaptation strategies that will help the city to mitigate risk to climate change. Implementation of the plan will cost money, but it is estimated that proactive planning and strategic action now is 4 to 6 times less costly than doing nothing. The plan is designed as a policy framework with flexible implementation, allowing the ability to prioritize implementation based off core benefits: social equity, public health and safety, natural resource protection and air quality, water quality, greenhouse gas mitigation, recreation, and economic continuity. These core benefits are associated with each strategy, allowing the city to select for strategies based off of these priorities. But ultimately, the success of any plan depends on its implementation, and the Climate Resilient SD plan is no different. The plan is designed to provide for flexibility so that the plan is implemented in a way that best serves our communities based on conditions at the time we are implementing. The strategies that are identified are potential strategies, but the specific selection of the types of strategies are decisions that will continue to need to be made for our lifetime. This means that continuous community engagement will be critical to the plan's success, especially as we continue to regularly monitor the plan's implementation. Like many of our planning efforts, this has been a several years long process. We began in 2018, followed by the completion of 3 climate change vulnerability assessments to assess climate change hazard impacts to the city, which formed the basis for the development of the adaptation strategies in the Climate Resilient SD plan. Beginning in 2020, as we began development of the plan, we collected more feedback through community-based organizations, surveys, workshops, stakeholder briefings, community newsletters, and through other community events, including the installation of a living wall in City Heights and the deployment of community volunteers to collect refined heat data to help us determine the areas of our city that are most vulnerable to extreme heat, while also sharing information on the Climate Resilient SD plan. This outreach will continue through release of the draft plan. We anticipate public hearings on Climate Resilient SD to begin this fall, with the goal of seeing the plan adopted by the City Council by the end of this year to comply with the state deadline. The draft Climate Resilient SD plan was released earlier this week on October 6th and was drafted based on input we have received so far on the plan and what we heard about our residents and businesses and what they want to see as we face a changing climate. However, that is not the end of the help we need to make this plan the best that it can be. With the draft plan released, your input is more critical than ever. We value the time that you spend reviewing this plan, and we can't wait to hear your feedback and suggestions on how to make it even better. There are many ways to stay engaged and to share your feedback too. You can start by signing up for updates on our website at www.sandiego.gov/resiliency. We hope you can also join our community forum on October 19th and share your comments and feedbacks on our live and interactive website, which we will go over at the end of the Climate Action Team's presentation in more detail. You can also email us, send us a letter, or any other way that is best for you. Please just let us know. As we move forward with public hearings on the plan, we hope that you will stay engaged and continue to share your thoughts with us. Now I will turn it over to Alyssa for a brief introduction and presentation on the Climate Action Plan.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Welcome, everybody. I'm here to speak to you as the Director of the Sustainability and Mobility Department. My name is Alyssa Muto. When the city released the landmark Climate Action Plan in 2015, we committed to updating the plan in the next 5 years. With input from our community members, we are preparing an update to the city's Climate Action Plan that we will release later this month. Focusing and centering around climate equity and our residents, we have framed the goals for greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the actions, by uplifting community voices, strengthening the city's partnerships with community-based organizations and residents, and prioritizing investments for our residents in communities of concern. This update will be an expanded vision for climate action in San Diego, and we are setting an aggressive net zero emissions goal. Through this update to the Climate Action Plan, San Diego will more closely align with the state goals and bring focus to incorporating the additional benefits of climate action, such as improving air quality, public health, jobs in the economy, and resiliency, which you just heard about. The Climate Action Plan will be a draft for all to review and provide comments to the city to refine our actions and strategies to move our city forward to reduce and avoid greenhouse gas emissions citywide. These local efforts will be aligned with national and global goals for creating a more sustainable future for all, elevating equity, developing a sustainable environment, and increasing economic opportunity. And with that, I will turn it over to Mariah Saldana to present to you our Climate Action Plan update.
Excellent. Thank you, Alyssa. Next slide. A climate action plan is a detailed and strategic framework for measuring, planning, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and related climate impacts. Our climate action plan identifies ambitious actions we will take to combat climate change. We are focusing our attention especially on actions that will result in healthier buildings and lifestyles, improved economic security, good green jobs, and more resilient communities, while minimizing our contribution to climate change. Next slide. This will be an aggressive and ambitious plan that demonstrates how the city can achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions. As the climate crisis continues to worsen, it is more important than ever for the city to set ambitious science-based goals accounting for our fair share of greenhouse gas emissions avoidance using the best available data and globally accepted methodology. Establishing a net zero greenhouse gas emissions target sets the pathway for eliminating fossil fuel emissions for most day-to-day activities in just over a decade. A net zero target allows the city to support addressing residual greenhouse gas emissions, or those emissions that will remain after all actions have been implemented, through research, pilots, and innovation, while there is still time to identify actions that are not as well understood or developed. Achieving net zero emissions will reduce other harmful air pollutants that directly impact public health, a top priority identified by our communities of concern. The city has identified 6 ambitious strategies to drastically avoid greenhouse gas emissions and pursue a goal of net zero emissions. Next slide. Our first strategy, decarbonization of the built environment, will address natural gas in all buildings, existing and new development. Burning natural gas to heat our homes, offices, and our water makes up 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions from our city's building sector. In this strategy, decarbonization means to remove carbon from a system with a focus on the source with the greatest potential for reduction, natural gas or methane. Next. Our second strategy, clean and renewable energy, maintains our 100% renewable energy target and addresses electric vehicle adoption citywide. Transitioning our energy system away from fossil fuels and toward clean and renewable sources is key to reducing the city's greenhouse gas emissions and supporting a more sustainable future. Energy consumed in the city of San Diego, that is, comes from renewable resources, will improve public health and safety while potentially providing long-term cost savings to residents and businesses. With deliberate policy design, these benefits can be especially focused in our communities of concern. Next. Our third strategy, mobility and land use, targets emissions from transportation, our single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in San Diego. The transportation sector has the greatest potential to achieve the net zero goal by making it easier for people to get around the city by bicycling, walking, or using transit. Our target for this strategy includes shifting 50% of all trips away from vehicular travel. Next. Most residential and commercial waste ends up in landfills, left to decompose over decades, producing landfill gas that contains carbon dioxide and methane, a greenhouse gas 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. The ways that society encourages producing and disposing of food and goods have negative consequences for both people and the planet. In this strategy, we will target the emissions created by waste. Strategy 4, circular economy, we will expand on our current zero waste goals to support gas capture, prevent waste from entering our landfill, and support efforts to increase composting and preventing food waste in response to California State Senate Bill 1383. Next. Our fifth strategy, resilient infrastructure and ecosystems, will help the city thrive in the face of the impacts of climate change. Climate resilient systems are proposed and mentioned throughout our document, but the actions within this strategy refer specifically to those associated with greenhouse gas emission reductions. As you previously heard from the planning team, Resilient SD is designed to broaden this lens and to address and prepare for climate change hazards that propose a risk to the city. This strategy will increase tree canopy coverage with a focus on our planting more trees in our communities of concern, strengthen and diversify our water supply, and restore our natural lands. Next. While the strategies listed above and before are transformational, there will be residual greenhouse gas emissions, or those emissions that will exist after all actions have been implemented. These emissions will need to be addressed to achieve our net zero goal. Residual emissions will account for roughly 20% of the total greenhouse gas emissions, meaning that further action, new policies, technological innovation, partnerships, and research are all necessary components of emerging climate actions that are beyond our current ability to quantify and assess. Next. The impacts of discrimination continue to affect the quality of life for many San Diegans, particularly in our communities of concern. Redressing past discrimination will take a thoughtful and intentional approach that is inclusive of and empowers our historically disenfranchised communities. For this reason, the city is centering climate equity in our climate action plan. This climate action plan seeks to address the historical inequities and advance climate equity by ensuring it is at the forefront of our efforts, uplifting our communities of concern and improving the quality of life for all San Diegans. We will expand on the city's climate equity initiatives, identify specific actions per strategy that help serve our communities of concern, and use the Climate Equity Index to prioritize the city's communities of concern, those expected to be hit first and worst by climate change. This is necessary and crucial if we are to see improved quality of life for all San Diegans. Next. While reducing greenhouse gas emissions is the main objective of this climate action plan, there are additional benefits to consider during implementation, including air quality, public health, jobs and economy, and resiliency. These benefits, known as core benefits, are positive outcomes that come with reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. The core benefits of climate action are what people will experience as the climate action plan is implemented: economic resiliency, strengthening of our community character, and improving public health and safety. When you review the climate action plan, you will be able to connect each action to the core benefits that it improves in your daily life. These core benefits were prioritized based on what we heard from our residents throughout our public engagement process while developing the climate action plan. Next. In 2020, the team focused on community engagement, the learn phase of our process. More than 3,300 people participated in our outreach efforts, including direct resident engagement in partnership with community-based organizations in our communities of concern, a digital survey, community presentations, and community forums. The draft climate action plan will be released later this month, and when that plan is released, your input is more crucial than ever. Next. We value the time you spend reviewing this plan, and we can't wait to hear your feedback and suggestions on how to make it even better. You can start by signing up for updates on our website at www.sandiego.gov/sustainability. And now I will hand it back over to Jordan Ward to give a tutorial on how to easily interact with and comment on our life plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Now we would like to give you a brief overview of how you'll be able to explore and provide input on our plans through our new interactive Conveyo web pages. When you are directed to the home page, you will have two different options. You may click on this button, Learn More, which will provide you with step-by-step guidance on how you can interact with different sections of the plan. Or you can walk through the individual sections of the plan independently. While we are eager to hear your feedback on the plan as a whole, we also understand that you may not have time to review and comment on the entire plan. So you'll notice that each chapter of the plan, as well as the appendices, is listed separately so that you can also choose to go directly to the sections you may be most interested in. When you are reviewing the plan, You will notice that many pages have interactive icons that can provide you with further information about that section of the plan, often linking you directly to additional resources. And once you are registered, you can provide your comments with the simple click of a button. We're very excited to introduce this new tool, and our hope is that it will make it easier than ever for you to review and provide feedback that will help us shape our final plans. Thank you in advance for reviewing our plans and providing us with your feedback, and we will look forward to hearing from you.